Greetings and welcome to an Equity.Guru investor roundtable. I am Roberto in some circles. That would be Galen down here in the basement, lounging, not in the dark today. What are you making?
Blueberry cheese scones.
Wow. Chris Perry in the upper far corner, living in the good life, as is Vejii directly above us in the penthouse with the fancy bedspread. Today we're talking about Vejii. Boy, this is interesting. It gets more interesting every day. And it's a company that we've talked about on a few occasions. In fact, on the website around us, you can watch Chris Perry on The Gauntlet talking to Corey Zellickson, the CEO, and also a slightly even more recent conversation with Jody Vance as well. First glance with Jody Vance. Vejii, VEJI on the Canadian Exchange. They're out of Kelowna, British Columbia. And pretty fascinating stuff going on. Of course, their brands are well known. They have shopvejii.com. They have vegan essentials. They have Veggie Express and all that. But what does it all mean right now, Chris Perry?
All right. So look, one of the things that's kept us in business for the past near decade has been that we like to call honest shots. So when we say something good about a company, that we feel like they've earned it, that they've given things at least an honest shake. And hey, mistakes can be made, things can be lost, milestones can be missed. That's just the way of things when it comes to early stage microcap companies. Vejii Holdings is, unfortunately, right now, one of those companies that is in that place. The nutshell here is that it's a food distribution service specifically for, I won't say vegans, but veggie-based people, plant-based people that are looking for unprocessed foods. And they're establishing themselves a network around North America with a reasonably close distribution system to most of their potential consumers. So if you don't want to go down to Whole Foods, or as some people call it, whole mortgage payment, and you'd rather get your plant-based foods and unprocessed foods delivered to you, that there's an option to do it. In Vancouver, we've had Spud as one of those options for a long time. Spud has issues in that you only get deliveries once a week, and you only have access to what's in their warehouse on that given day. You've got to order well ahead of time. So, you know, there are reasons why this sort of model that Vejii is proposing would be something that people could really get into. Not the least of which is there are a lot of distributors of these kinds of foods. They're generally small companies, mom and pops, and to get on the store shelves at like a Loblaws, it's a lot of work and often a lot of money. So what Vejii's doing is giving these places a chance to show that there's a market demand, and if there is, then those distributors get moved along their system to a much more sort of overnight kind of deal. Great. So what's the problem? The problem is, one, that's pretty expensive to set up. You've got to raise a bit of money to do it. Two, you might not be profitable for a while because you're building out into demand. And three, look, man, the plant-based sector, for want of a better phrase, has been decimated over the last year because it had such a ridiculously stupid, overvalued run for a good year and a half that now it's being sucked back into the pack. Inflation's not helping. A lot of these products are already expensive. Last mile distribution has gotten more expensive. So they're in a bit of a rough spot. Nothing necessarily to do with whether or not they're a good company, whether they're good operators, but they've had a bit of uphill pull. The second reason there's been a bit of uphill pull is because Corey Zellickson was part of Namaste, a cannabis company that went through a few things back in the day. And so it wears a little bit of the stigma of that, despite the fact that Namaste actually did create a distribution system much similar to what Vejii's talking about for cannabis that has been maybe the saving grace for that group. So right now you've got a deal where that company has been late on their financials. And quite frankly, the share price has shown that. They went down to a pretty hard 5 cents, rolled the stock back 4 for 1. Took a bit of a beating on that, as you do. And so here we are. The stock is now at what I think is a bottom. Financials will be due any time now. If they show good things, then this would be great. If they don't show good things, then more pain ahead. But as a group that likes to remain honest and not sell people a bill of goods, for us, this is a vulture situation right now. I believe the company, if they're doing what they say they were going to do, is probably in a place where it would be really difficult to get a lower market cap. $6 million market cap right now on about $6.5 million projected annual revenue based on January's numbers makes it pretty inexpensive. Can they get access to more money if they need to? I'm guessing that's what the rollback was for. Right. So all told, I'm not going to tell you to run out and buy this stock. I will say that if you do, it's at a pretty interesting level in terms of lowering your risk.
Mr. Galen, your comments?
Yeah, I'll follow what Chris has sort of laid out in terms of where we feel we're at, situationally speaking. The company has a hard road to hoe. It's a difficult industry to get into. You're attempting to make retail sales. You have to market yourself, tapping into a market that's highly discretionary. So the inflationary period that we're seeing right now is incredibly destructive to these types of businesses because, as Vishal noted earlier, and as I showed you, the prices at all-time highs mean people are fleeing from the online marketplace and going back to the supermarkets themselves. And getting shelf space on those places, wow, especially now. So it is an interesting idea. I like what the company has done to provide a central place for people that are interested in plant-based foods. And yes, as Chris said, this is not necessarily a vegan-only kind of option. This is for people that are interested in a healthier food option that's plant-based and also for sustainable living products. They're planning to branch out. They've already got a few products in there that are not something you can nibble on, but something you can feel good about buying that you know that you're not ruining the planet. Not having financials for about 6 months is probably not looking good for the company. I think, however, if they manage to come out with something in the next little while, now there are some reasons that this could be taking place. They've had a lot of announcements over the last 3 months in regards to M&A, partnership deals, distribution deals, which essentially, I wouldn't say mess up the paperwork, but make them a little more complicated, and it's a bit more difficult to get a good financial picture going. However, on their last reporting back in November, they were down about $2.5 million, I believe, in that neighborhood. That was an improvement over the previous period, which means they're on the way of building themselves. And they did have a guidance of this year producing between $10 and $12 million of revenue. Of course, you could say that's all talk until we see it hit the pavement, and that is true. But this is what they're saying. It's not necessarily Elon Musk, so you could probably sort of trust it, kind of, maybe just a little. Now, we are in a situation where the stock price is extremely low. Will it go below this? If everything is set the way that the company has put it forward that it's doing, then would assume that this is. However, I wouldn't be adverse to hanging out to wait for the financials to see what you can see in terms of how this stuff is panning out. I mean, they're great deals on the surface. They seem to be. They're taking over responsibilities of packaging and distribution for it's Unreal Deli, I believe, which is a fairly big name in the States at this point in time in terms of vegan dishes and such. So they're branching out. They're making it happen. They're not just sitting there going, please give us a little more equity financing so we can move forward. And as Chris said, the rollback is most likely in an effort to get that financing because it's a costly endeavor. You have to market, you have to bring people under your roof, you have to provide those deals, for instance, the partnerships and the distribution deals, so you have to support that financially. So, this is something that they have to do. Market's not in a pretty place right now. And it seems to be with our meme-driven investment these days that every new market that comes to play on the stock boards just bloat themselves. People get had like sheep, right, left, and center. So it's kind of our own fault in terms of where this market is right now. Hopefully, at some point, we'll be able to be a little more judging when these things hit the markets.
Not a chance, man. Have you heard about the cannabis investors out there?
It's ridiculous. I mean, they're still blowing their whistles and hurrahing this bill that's never going to pass. We're very much in a neophyte situation when it comes to investor confidence. Overconfidence, I'll say, and knowledge in terms of what's actually going on in the markets. They're being sold on stock promotion right, left, and center. So our fault, kind of, for where this sector sits. Is it going to build? It's an eventuality. The
It's a long-term play at this point.
Yeah.
Exactly. I like the company. I like the guy that's running it. I like the business model. It's going to take time and money, and like everything, there is a certain amount of luck. So we're going to have to wait to see what we see in the financials for me.
Speaking of food delivery, my lunch is here. I'll be back.
All right.
Unreal Deli, you mentioned, that was an
Yes.
announcement they made in mid-March. They also announced at the end of March the VFC, they launched vegan fried chicken. That's
Vegan fried chicken.
That's
a
right.
UK brand on Veggie Express.
And they teamed up with Vejii.
Vejii, yeah. And also, although they didn't have their financials end of January, they did announce their corporate update and their 2022 guidance. So people can check that out on their deck if they'd like. But what has it all meant, Mr. Vejii, on the chart skis?
So just as, Chris and Galen have talked about, this whole sector has been getting a bit of a hit. And, Chris and Galen both mentioned cannabis as well. So when I look at this kind of stuff as a trader or as a long-term investor, I'm sort of thinking, okay, are these sectors cheap compared to, everything else, right? Compared to, I don't know, tech and all that kind of stuff. You guys know that I do write an agriculture report. I do follow agriculture closely. The plant-based food sector is pretty close to that space when we talk about groceries and stuff. But I have seen, and it is a bit of a thing, that the vegan food tends to be a bit more pricier than regular groceries. And Galen and Chris both mentioned this, the whole idea of food prices rising. Is that going to get people now to spend less on, say, healthier foods? But then again, maybe following consumer trends, we'll see if health food choices matter, because there'll be some people that will say, hey, man, my health is my wealth, and I'm going to spend the money to buy this kind of stuff. So, I'm curious to see how that plays out in the next few months, because it's not just, the food prices going up, right? It's a whole bunch of other stuff, gas prices, living costs, all that kind of stuff. So, people might be taking cuts at some places. And yeah, this article did mention Americans are abandoning online grocery shopping and returning to supermarket aisles. We have spoken about earnings. That's sort of what the stock needs. There's been all these press releases with deals with Blender Bites. We talked about the Unreal Deli and also vegan fried chicken here. I think the earnings is going to be quite important. And there's also this expansion, right, into the UK and Europe. So right now, Vejii is accessible in Canada and the US, and they are planning to expand into Europe and the UK. So that's another, factor to consider. When we look at the charts here, once again, the structure is going to be similar here. Obviously, the price changes are going to be different due to that share consolidation, which actually occurred on the 25th of March, it looks like, the 1-to-4 stock split there. So the structure's all there, but the prices obviously went before that stock split. It's going to be different to the prices we have here now. But essentially, there was a big support zone. I believe we were talking about this way back in the day, around what, after the share consolidation is around 62 cents here, 62.5 cents. And we did talk about that breakdown. Unfortunately, it didn't hold. And we kept dropping lower and lower, and there was maybe a potential of bottoming here, but nothing came out of it. We broke below that, and we continued lower, and then on the 23rd of March, we actually hit all-time record lows at 16 cents. So the big question now is this the bottom, right? Is this a chance to get in? As a trader, there is a pattern here, which I do sort of like, and it is called the double bottom pattern, which basically looks like a W pattern. And it's a pattern I've talked about many times, and it happens after a prolonged downtrend. But the thing is, the trigger is what actually gets the pattern or the stock to reverse. So we don't have that trigger just yet. For veggie, it means we have to get a candle close above the 32 cents level. So right now we're trading at 22.5 cents. So, 10 cents from now is when you actually get the confirmation of an actual reversal. But, if we don't get that breakout, right, the stock can just continue to bounce or range or, even break into new lows and continue lower, just like we did here in mid-February. So until we get that breakout, there is a potential of new lows, right? Depending on some headlines that might come out in the future. And again, that earnings, I think, is going to be the big one, right? Because we've been patiently waiting for that. If I recall, I think even in our last investor roundtable, we were talking about, patiently waiting for those earnings, which haven't come out yet. So that's the catalyst. There is that growth catalyst, like we mentioned, with the UK and Europe. But I think this whole sector, the plant-based sector, is going to be quite interesting for me, just because all of this food price and food price inflation headlines. And I just wonder if the consumer is going to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to try to buy canned food, frozen food, things that are much cheaper, and usually the cheap stuff have a larger portion, because the other thing about vegan food is I find it's pricier and there's a lot less of it in the packet. So, that's just going to be something to watch going forward. And, that's not just going to impact, I think, veggie per se, but it'll probably impact a lot of the plant-based food sectors if food price inflation gets a bit bad. But Chris, did you want to mention something about the level 2 here?
Yeah, so I'm looking at the level 2 there just to see what sort of interest level there is beyond the easy bid and ask. And what I find is that once you go past the 20 cent, 18 cent, 17.5 cent bid, which is only 2,500 shares, there's not a lot of built-in purchasing all the way down here on Vejii. That said, on the ask side, same thing. Like, honestly, once you get past 22 to 23 cents, your next jump is 28.5, 29, 33. So people who are actually looking to offload their stock are not blowing through it cheap. They're actually pegging up multiple levels here. So, there's going to be some wild price swings on this thing, which I think is really worth noting. In the last week, it's gone from 18 cents, 17.5 cents to up to 24. So there's some volatility on pretty low volume. So, go in with your eyes open. You don't necessarily need to go chomping in for a team vegan here. You can sit on the sidelines for a little bit and watch. Yeah. But, if you did go and buy 10,000 shares, you're jumping this thing up to 30 cents, assuming there aren't any icebergs.
Speaking of that, are you actually going to spend on either on a trade concept or on a hold on to it for a long time concept?
I really want to see what they've got planned. I think, Vishal, if you can switch the screen through to ticker symbol MEAT. So you may recall modern plant-based foods came out when Impossible and Beyond Meat were hitting the markets. They were part of the same group that was infamous for the bridge mark scandal that is still yet to be punished in any meaningful way. These guys, while they were being investigated for that, put together their plant-based food deal, and it flew to $3 real quick. If you look at the 2-year on that, it hit as much as $5. This thing is now 40 cents. Wow. The market cap on it would have been around $300 million when it hit 5. What did it actually have at that point? It had a kitchen in Kitsilano, BC, that had come out with a brand of plant-based seafood. That's it. It was in about 6 stores, probably stores that were buddies of the guys that behind the deal, and it was a $300 million deal at that point. Now, if we look at the 1-year newses of the last 1 year of news for this group, they've gone through 3 CEOs in 6 months. They've raised money, even as the stock is bleeding. They spent another $10 million to buy another brand of veggie food. Their news is like things like Modern Plant in talks with several restaurant groups. This group, this company, on a market cap side, is a $20 million deal even after it bled out 95% of its share price. Now, if we look over at the veggie side of things, God, the market cap on the veggie side is $6 million. Now, meat is going out and putting news releases saying they're talking to restaurants trying to sell whatever they can. The guys that they're looking to sell through are companies like Vejii, right? Now, what do you want to be a part of? Do you want to be a part of someone's recipe that's been vacuum packed in Kitsilano and then sold to 3 restaurants across the street? Or do you want to be the distribution network that takes that product and sends it all over North America? Like, honestly, to say that this is 1/3 of the price of the modern meat, plant-based, blah, 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 is absurd to me. Not to say that meat is a great example of a share price that is in great shape. The chart on that thing is diabolical. But 20 million bucks seems to have been the place where it's bottomed out. I can't, if that has any justification, look at Vejii and say that that's not a screaming deal. You're buying the picks and shovels instead of one guy who's going to swing the picks and shovels. It just doesn't make any sense. I'm not necessarily jumping out and buying at this price because, as has been mentioned, there's not a lot on the way up, not a lot on the way down. The problem with this deal is everybody's playing wait and see. So someone with a bit of risk tolerance can go in there, take a big chomp at this level where, you know, it does seem like there's some flaw, but you never know. It really, you're a bad day away from it jumping down to 12 cents and that being a new floor. Or it could go to 30 cents on one trade and away you go. So honestly, I'm not going to throw away things on a risky deal. I want to see those financials before I jump in. I think there's a lot of other people in the same boat. That's why they're not looking to buy with stink bids. Everyone's just out of it on this one. They're waiting to see what's going to happen.
Galen, same story for you, or are you going to dabble?
Well, I'm cheap at the best of times. I just, I honestly, I'm a value investor. I look for the long-term value, but I need some more solid indication that this is on its way up. I don't need to see this hockey stick. I don't give a crap if it is $90 by the end of the month. That's not my game. I just need to see positive movement. I'm seeing it on the news side. I just need to see it on the bottom line. So I'm going to wait it out.
All right. And that leaves it to Vishal.
Yeah, I'm going to echo similar stuff that Chris and Galen said here. It needs that catalyst. As a trade, I think there is something to work with, obviously, with the technical pattern. But the trigger is that breakout of 32 cents. So if that happened, if the stock actually did close above 32 cents, I wouldn't mind, putting somewhere between $1,000 to $2,000 of my money in that trade for, a quick pop up, which could happen up to 50 to 56 cents. But the thing is, it's missing that catalyst, right? What's going to give us that breakout? Likely going to be something with the earnings when that comes out. So as of now, I'm not doing anything. But if we do get that close above 32 cents, get that breakout from a trade perspective, it looks really nice.
The projections were that it would make, what was it, 18 to 20 million a year? Is that right?
Yeah. 10 to 12 at this
10 to 12,
year.
sorry.
10 to 12 this year. No.
So even if it was just priced at that revenue, it's a double from here.
Yeah. And we'd definitely be making money at that point.
And you're usually looking for about 2.5 times revenue, right, as a general sort of base, notwithstanding other things. So 2 to 2.5 times would be about $25 million, which would be a 5x.
Something like that.
On current.
Yep.
If you're up for a gamble, that's an interesting gamble. But it's a gamble at this point, right? Until we have real solid guidance to go on, then you're trusting that the company's going to do what they say they're going to do. And that's not always a wise bet. All right. We like to make sure that our companies we work with are delivering on their promise. And like we've said before, it's not always possible. Sometimes intangibles happen, but we definitely want that projection to not be just complete air.
And it is a company we work with, and as usual, we're open and honest about the whole shooting match. So we'll see where it's at, and of course, I think we'll circle back here with these guys in the coming not so distant future in the weeks to see what exactly is going on, and then we can update everybody, which would be kind of cool.
Yep.
In the meantime, though, no dollars, no $7,500. I get to keep all my 22 grand here. The fellas are not taking it and spending it, so that's okay. We are talking about Vejii, of course, VEJI on the Canadian exchange. They're based in Kelowna. It's Corey Zellickson. And again, You can watch Corey talking about this and other things with Chris Perry on the Gauntlet on our website right here, and also with Jody Vance, kind of more of a general description and conversation, fun stuff about what they are up to. But check it all out, because that's the education you need. That's the education you should use moving forward. We can't guarantee any results. We can't guarantee what we told you. So please do your homework, and past performance does not guarantee future results. It's Vejii. We'll come back to these guys in the not so distant and give you an update, but that's the way it stands from our perspective right now. This has been the Equity Guru Investor Roundtable, and that is Chris enjoying some real meat, and Galen with some blueberry scones down in the basement, and there's probably well, they might be laced with something, and then Vishal directly above us, ready to open a scotch and lounge on his bed cover.
What else would he use as icing?
I will see you, and they will see you, and we will all see you on the very next Equity Guru Investor Roundtable. Cheers.
Bye.